Hi, today is 14th of August 2015, and what I wanted to discuss was something that is quite extraordinary in some respects. Although to some people they might regard it as nothing to be concerned about, and other people would say that's quite amazing. I'm talking about the particular the trains in Western Queensland, which is the Inlander from Townsville to Mount Isa, and from Brisbane to Charleville, and the fact that both of those trains have had their sleeping and dining cars removed. Now you would think, well, can't do much about that. They were made up until December last year of what they call the M series cars, which is like the Sunlander from Brisbane to Cairns, and of course those cars are 60 years old and made of mild steel, and became rusty and just simply needed to be replaced. Well, they didn't really need to do too much to replace them, in a sense that they had a reasonable fleet of stainless steel cars built in the 1980s. Now, where those cars are operating is that on the Spirit of the Outback train, which runs from Brisbane to Longreach, for example, it has it's 11 car consist. It has 3 sleeping cars, which were converted from pure roomette cars built in the 1980s. As I said, they made them into twinette and roomette cars by simply knocking out the walls on some of the roomettes and calling them a twinette. May not quite have the style or the standard of twinette cars, for example, along the Indian Pacific or the Ghan, but they're an affordable alternative. In other words, the actual conversion was quite relatively cheap, and as they're 1980s cars, they've got quite a number of years to go in their lives, let's say 15 to 20 years without any problems. And to give an example of what a stainless steel car can do, those have been operating in Canada for 50 years, are still going. However, what they do is rebuild them, and they've done that actually twice to refurbish them, and they're nice cars, and they're a world-class carriage. Now, the other Queensland stainless steel cars are running at the moment on what rail fans call the Tiltlander, which is like a haul train to supplement the Brisbane to Rockhampton tilt train service, because one set of tilt trains cars is being refurbished and basically rebuilt completely. It's called what you call a half-life rebuild. The second set will be done by the middle of next year, and then those cars will be available for other purposes. Now, included in them are at least 2 dining cars, which are actually called snack bar lounges because they have a counter cut into the side of the wall where the kitchen is, and people can come down from their sitting cars and buy food and go back to their seats and eat them, or they could sit at the tables, which is, in other words, like a dining car. You just sit at the table and enjoy your meal there. Now, they would be available for the Inlander and for the Westlander if they desire. Also, it would be possible to convert some of those sitting cars into lay-flat seat cars. Now, they're never of the desired standard that a person would want or expect in a sleeping car, but the most outstanding thing that has happened, and I guess you've heard the term hidden in plain sight. Well, what is hidden in plain sight in Queensland are 2 14-passenger sleeping cars that are running, one of them on the Inlander and one of them on the Westlander, for staff. And you'd say, well, that's okay, but is it? Because there's only 3 staff. So you've got 14 berths, therefore 11 empty on every train of every service for many months, and has been denied in writing by Queensland Rail. They say they have no sleeping cars available. That is not true. It might be unfair perhaps for a person to call that an outright lie, but that's what it is, an outright lie. Those cars are running right now. And what could be done is that the 11 berths could be made available to the public, as Queensland Rail also expect to have a small snack bar lounge, as they call it, introduced next month, and they'll have available tea making and coffee making facilities, and they expect people to sit up for the 21-hour trip from Mount Isa to Townsville or vice versa, while their staff go to bed at night and just say, "Good night, folks, there's only 2 or 3 of you, but good night, and I'll see you later, I'm going to bed," basically. And they do that. All I have asked for, and I hope I'm not the only person who's raised this, is for those cars that already exist to be open to the public, the 11 sleeping berths. And incidentally, to illustrate this point further, I travelled on the Spirit of the Outback, which is an extremely popular train, to the point where it was completely booked out from Brisbane to Longreach. Now, of course, at Longreach you have the Stockman's Hall of Fame, and you have the Qantas Museum, and there are numerous other attractions, including boat trips along the Thompson River and so forth. What was overlooked is that the sleeping berths that are in that car and not used were unbooked. So if a person was looking for a sleeping berth, they'd be told, "Sorry, the train's booked out." Now, that train does have about 6 onboard staff, so, and not quite half of the car is taken up by staff, quite unlike the 3 staff that are on the Westlander, and I assume to be on the Inlander. Anyway, this hidden in plain sight situation is going on, and one is forced to ask, how long can this go? At the moment, you'll get the spin, as it were, or the line, that hardly anyone's travelling on the train. 3 or 4 people on a train, or 6 people on a train, depending on the day of operation and so forth. And, why not put a bus service on there? Well, that's easy to say, and I'm not blind to that possibility. But I would say, as they're running a virtually empty sleeping car on the Inlander and on the Westlander, an Inlander in particular, by the way, that I have contacted the Mayor of Mount Isa, and he has offered support on it, but I've asked him to literally go down, get out of his office and go down to the railway station and have a look at the Inlander and ask the staff to see the staff car. Now, may I have a look at your staff car? And he'd walk inside of it and see all those empty sleeping berths. So I don't give it very long before there'll be something done, but what is happening is what I would describe as deception by omission. In other words, Queensland Rail are very, very quiet, and the Pelagier government, which is in by the skin of its teeth, is very, very quiet on the subject. But I would never be surprised to see an announcement in the coming weeks or the next few months before the end of this year that tremendous advances are being made. There's going to be a 6th service on the Spirit of Queensland, which was talked about for July and never happened. Oh, and there's going to be buses 5 days a week from Townsville to Mount Isa, and all the pensioners and so on who travel on that will be able to use the bus service. Well and good, but right now they're running with empty sleeping cars, and that is the only situation like that in the entire world. I'll leave it with my friends to consider what should be done. Thank you for viewing.